Welcome back to Pharma World Channel. In the highly regulated world of pharmaceuticals, there's a golden rule. If it isn't documented, it didn't happen. In this informative and comprehensive video, we will explore the main types documentation to comply with GMP, the quality assurance system for issuance and control of documentation, good documentation practices including the retention of documents in addition to data integrity, CoA++. Documentation constitutes an essential part of the quality assurance system and is key to operating in compliance with GMP requirements. The various types of documents and means used should be fully understood and defined in the regulated user's pharmaceutical quality system. Documentation may exist in a variety of forms, including paper-based, electronic or other means such as photography, imagery, video and audio recordings. The main objective of the documentation system is to establish, control, monitor, and record all activities belong to manufacturing, quality, and safety of medicinal products. Whether documents are created, stored, and managed electronically, paper-based, by other means or through a hybrid system, they must meet the same GMP requirements for legibility, accuracy, integrity, and completeness throughout the whole lifecycle. This also applies when documentation is outsourced. The main types documentation. The documents in pharma industry are classified into three main categories. 1. Master documents. 2. Instructions, directions, requirements. 3. Records, reports. The first category of documents is master and commitment documents. The following are the common master documents in pharma industry. 1. Site Master File. A comprehensive document that provides a detailed, structured overview of the entire good manufacturing practice, GMP, related operations, activities and quality control systems at a specific manufacturing site. SMF includes the following 10 parts. Part 1. General information about the manufacturing site. Part 2. Quality Management System, QMS. Part 3. Personnel. Part 4. Premises and equipment. Part 5. Documentation. Part 6. Production. Part 7. Quality Control, QC. Part 8. Distribution, Complaints, Product Defects, and Recalls. Part 9. Self-inspections. Part 10. Appendices. 2. Validation Master Plan, VMP, is a high-level strategic document that outlines the entire validation program for a pharmaceutical facility, process, or system. It is the cornerstone of all validation activities. 1. Introduction and scope. 2. Project description. 3. Organizational structure and responsibilities. 4. Validation policy and approach. 5. List of systems, equipment, and processes to be validated. 6. The validation approach for each category. 7. Acceptance criteria. 8. Documentation and protocol structure. 9. Schedule. 10. Change control and maintenance of validated state. 11. Approvals. 3. Quality Manual is a top-level strategic document that describes the intent and framework of a company's quality management system, QMS. It is the constitution for quality within an organization. Think of it as the foundation document or umbrella policy for all quality-related activities. It doesn't describe specific tasks in detail, but states the company's quality policy, objectives, and the structure of the QMS that fulfills that policy. Other documents such as CTD or ECTD for finished products manufacturers, DMF for API manufacturers. The second category of the documents are instructions, directions, or requirements. The following are the commonly used documents of this type. 1. Procedures, known as Standard Operating Procedures, or SOPs, is a detailed written instruction that describes the step-by-step process for performing a certain operations or repetitive activity. SOPs are the backbone of the quality management system, QMS, and are a fundamental requirement of good manufacturing practices, GMP. They translate the high-level policies from the quality manual into actionable, on-the-ground instructions. A good SOP has a standardized format to ensure clarity and ease of use by including the following sections but not limited to: SOP title, SOP number, version number, effective date, review and approval signatures, purpose, scope, definitions, responsibilities, procedure, references, appendices, revision history. 2. Manufacturing formula and processing instructions, commonly known as batch manufacturing record, BMR. It is approved. Written instructions should exist for each product and batch size to be manufactured. The manufacturing formula should include the following parts: the name of the product, a description of the pharmaceutical form, strength of the product and batch size, any special precautions to be observed, a list of all starting materials to be used, with the amount of each material, a statement of the expected intermediate and final yield with the acceptable limits, a statement of the processing location and the principal equipment to be used, checks that the equipment and workstation are clear of previous products, documents or materials not required for the planned process, and that equipment is clean and suitable for use. Detailed stepwise processing instructions such as checks on materials, pre-treatments, sequence for adding materials, critical process parameters as time, temperature, the instructions for any in-process controls with their limits. Where necessary, the requirements for bulk storage of the products, including the container, labeling and special storage conditions where applicable. 3. Packaging instructions, commonly known as batch packaging record, BPR, which include the following parts. Name of the product. A description of the pharmaceutical form, strength of the product and batch size, the pack size. Any special precautions to be observed. A list of all packaging materials to be used, with the amount of each material. Statement of the expected intermediate and final yield with the acceptable limits. A statement of the processing location and the principal equipment to be used. Checks that the equipment and workstation are clear of previous products, documents or materials not required for the planned process, and that equipment is clean and suitable for use. Detailed stepwise packaging instructions. The instructions for any in-process controls with their limits. Where necessary, the requirements for bulk storage of the products, including the container, labeling and special storage conditions where applicable. Where appropriate, an example or reproduction of the relevant printed packaging materials, and specimens indicating where to apply batch number references and shelf life of the product. 4. Specifications. Describe in the authorized and dated details the requirements with which the starting materials and primary or printed packaging materials used, intermediate, bulk or finished products or obtained during manufacture have to conform. They serve as a basis for quality evaluation. 5. Test method, commonly called as standard test procedure, STP, or methods of analysis. It is the precise recipe for the QC lab on how to test the starting materials and primary or printed packaging materials used, intermediate, bulk or finished products for quality evaluation according to the specifications. 6. Protocols. Give instructions for performing and recording certain discrete operations. The following are examples of tasks that require protocol: validation and qualification of processes, equipment and systems, equipment assembly and calibration, technology transfer, maintenance, cleaning and sanitation. Personnel. Matters including signature lists, training in GMP and technical matters, clothing and hygiene and verification of the effectiveness of training, environmental monitoring, pest control, complaints, recalls, returns. Change control. Investigations into deviations and non-conformances. Internal quality, GMP compliance audits. Summaries of records where appropriate, such as product quality review. Supplier audits. Stability studies. Risk management. 7. Technical agreements. Are agreed between contract givers and acceptors for outsourced activities that is mutually negotiated and concluded between parties involved in the manufacturing, packaging, testing, storage, distribution, marketing, and/or sales of product or other services. It is intended to define in formalized manner responsibilities and commitments of parties. Record report type. Records. Provide evidence of various actions taken to demonstrate compliance with instructions, such as activities, events, investigations, and in the case of manufactured batches, a history of each batch of product, including its distribution. Records include the raw data which is used to generate other records. For electronic records, regulated users should define which data are to be used as raw data. At least all data on which quality decisions are based should be defined as raw data. Records can also exist as hybrid records, which is a combination of paper records, electronic records, or by other means. The completeness and integrity of records, including all relevant raw data and metadata, should be ensured and protected based on risk. Logbooks and analysis notebooks are the most commonly used records. Certificates of analysis provide a summary of testing results on samples of products or materials with the evaluation for compliance to a stated specification. Reports document the conduct of particular exercises, projects, or investigations, together with results, conclusions, and recommendations. Usually, report is required for each task protocol. Generation and control of documentation. Documents should be designed, prepared, reviewed, approved, and distributed in a controlled manner. The reproduction of master documents from master documents should not allow any error or alteration to be introduced through the reproduction process. The issuance, revision, superseding, and withdrawal of all documents should be controlled with maintenance of revision histories. Documents within the quality management system should be regularly reviewed and kept up to date. When a document has been revised, systems should be operated to prevent inadvertent use of superseded documents. Documents containing instructions should be easy to understand, and language of documents should fit with their intended use. Standard operating procedures, work instructions, and methods should be written in an imperative mandatory style by using predefined format. Written instructions may be supported with pictures, photos, or videos. Documents containing instructions should be approved, signed, and dated by appropriate and authorized persons. The effective date should be defined. Approved documents should not be handwritten, although where documents require the entry of data, sufficient space should be provided for such entries. Good documentation practices, GDP. Good documentation practices are key to ensuring data integrity and a fundamental part of a well-designed pharmaceutical quality system. ALCOA is a foundational framework for data integrity, originally coined by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, FDA. It defines the key characteristics that data must have to be considered reliable and trustworthy, especially in regulated industries like pharmaceuticals, medical devices, and clinical research. ALCOA stands for attributable. It should be possible to identify the individual or computerized system that performed a recorded task and when the task was performed. This also applies to any changes made to records, such as corrections, deletions, and changes, where it is important to know who made a change, when, and why. Example: a lab record must be signed by the analyst who performed the test. An electronic entry must have a unique user login. Legible. All records should be legible. The information should be readable and unambiguous in order to be understandable and of use. This applies to all information that would be required to be considered complete, including all original records or entries. Where the dynamic nature of electronic data, the ability to search, query, trend, etc., is important to the content and meaning of the record, the ability to interact with the data using a suitable application is important to the availability of the record. Example: handwritten entries must be clear and in permanent ink. Electronic data must not be corrupted or lost over time. Contemporaneous: the evidence of actions, events, or decisions should be recorded as they take place. This documentation should serve as an accurate attestation of what was done or what was decided and why, i.e., what influenced the decision at that time. Example: an observation in a clinical trial should be recorded immediately, not written on a sticky note and transcribed days later. Original: the original record can be described as the first capture of information, whether recorded on paper, static, or electronically, usually dynamic, depending on the complexity of the system. Information that is originally captured in a dynamic state should remain available in that state. Example: the first printout from a balance or the electronic record itself is the original. A photocopy or a scanned PDF can be a true copy if it is verified and certified. Accurate: records need to be a truthful representation of facts to be accurate. Ensuring records are accurate is achieved through many elements of a robust pharmaceutical quality system. Example: the data must reflect what actually happened. There should be no errors in transcription, calculations, or measurements. As industries and technology evolved, regulators recognized that Alcoa alone wasn't sufficient. The plus adds 4 more crucial principles to address the complexities of modern data systems, particularly electronic data. Alcoa Plus adds, complete. All information that would be critical to recreating an event is important when trying to understand the event. It is important that information is not lost or deleted. The level of detail required for an information set to be considered complete would depend on the criticality of the information. A complete record of data generated electronically includes relevant metadata. Example, all data from a test run must be retained, not just the good results. If a test is repeated, both the original and repeat data must be saved, with an explanation. Consistent. Information should be created, processed, and stored in a logical manner that has a defined consistency. This includes policies or procedures that help control or standardize data, e.g. chronological sequencing, date formats, units of measurement, approaches to rounding, significant digits. Example, the data should be date and time stamped in a sequence that makes sense. There should be no unexplained gaps or chronological inconsistencies, e.g., a result appearing before the test was run. Enduring. Records should be kept in a manner such that they exist for the entire period during which they might be needed. This means they need to remain intact and accessible as an indelible, durable record throughout the record retention period. Example, data should be stored in a validated system with regular backups. Lab notebooks should be bound, not on loose-leaf paper. Available records should be available for review at any time during the required retention period, accessible in a readable format to all applicable personnel who are responsible for their review, whether for routine release decisions, investigations, trending, annual reports, audits, or inspections. Example, data must be easily retrievable for audits, inspections, and review throughout its legal retention period, which can be many years. This includes having the right software and hardware to read old file formats. Alcoa++ adds, traceable. Traceability is the ability to trace the history, modification, or location of data by means of recorded identifications. Documents retention. How do you manage this mountain of documents without chaos? Through a rigid document control lifecycle. Secure controls must be in place to ensure the integrity of the record throughout the retention period and validated where appropriate. Batch documentation must be kept for 1 year after expiry of the batch to which it relates, or at least 5 years after certification of the batch by the qualified person, whichever is the longer. For other types of documentation, the retention period will depend on the business activity which the documentation supports. Critical documentation, including raw data, for example relating to validation or stability, should be retained whilst the authorization remains in force. Justification for this should be documented and should take into account the requirements for retention of batch documentation. For example, in the case of process validation data, the accompanying raw data should be retained for a period at least as long as the records for all batches whose release has been supported on the basis of that validation exercise. A documented process for the disposal of records should be in place to ensure that the correct original records or true copies are disposed only after the defined retention period. Measures should be in place to reduce the risk of deleting the wrong documents. The access rights allowing disposal of records should be controlled. So, to wrap up, GMP documentation is not just paperwork, it's a system designed to ensure product quality, patient safety, and data integrity. Each document, from the high-level sitemaster file down to a single logbook entry, is a critical piece of the puzzle. Remember, in the eyes of an inspector, your documentation is your quality. If your docs are a mess, they will assume your processes are too. What's the biggest documentation challenge you face in your facility? Let us know in the comments below. If you found this deep dive valuable, smash that like button, subscribe to Pharma World channel, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next video where we'll be breaking down the change control process. Thanks for watching.